My name is Ijama Iwichku, and I'll be doing my presentation on the film Nowhere in Africa. This film is an Academy Award winning film, and I believe it won Best Foreign Language. And the film is also partially in German and, in English. The film was directed by Caroline Link. It was written and directed by Caroline Link. This film focuses on a family of Jewish refugees who leave Nazi-occupied Germany, and they seek refugee. They seek refuge in Kenya. This is just another picture displaying that's Walter, and that is Chatel, his wife, and that's their daughter Regina and the help. So my next item is a true story waiting to be told. This story is actually based on a true story, and it was adapted from Stephanie, who is played as Regina in the movie. When Stephanie was younger, she left Nazi Germany with her mother to find sanctuary in Kenya. Her father was already living there, and her father was working as a farm help, like a farm manager. He oversaw the farm, not overseeing the farm, but at least the workers. That's what was depicted in the movie, at least. Her father was working there for 6 months before she arrived. Being refugees in Kenya is totally different from living in Germany. Her father was actually a lawyer before he went to Kenya and worked on a farm. So you can see the big drop. Like, imagine going from a lawyer to a farmer. It was very different for her, and basically, like, she was in a whole new world. So, of course, language was a barrier. She talks about. I actually read Stephanie's. She goes into detail about her life, which is located right here in this link, about everything. And I actually read there how she talks about how she feared for her life in Germany as Jews, which I wrote here. But when she came to Kenya, they were called bloody refugees. So it's like she's escaping one traumatic thing to another traumatic thing in a way. And even though they're not being killed in Kenya and all that, but at the same time they're not being accepted as how they are. They're still being judged, and that is displayed in the beginning of the movie too, when Regina and her mother first arrive, and Walter takes them into the kitchen, and the farm manager or the farm owner comes out. And he gets into it about the well. Walter building a well because they lack water, and as he's walking out, he's like, "You bloody refugees." I feel like that the film was trying to depict what Stephanie was talking about, which I wrote down here also in these couple of lines. So the film, like I mentioned, was an adaptation of what Stephanie wrote. So the film is not, I guess some elements of the film is fiction, but some of it is also nonfiction. So I feel like the film actually took Stephanie's words and just turned them into vivid images, because, like I mentioned before, I read about her story, and now, like, when I think about the film, it's like, as I was reading her story, I was just picturing different scenes from the movie, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so realistic and very believable. Like, I feel like the film was not very dramatic. It wasn't over exaggerated, because we watch some movies and we understand that they're trying to get a point across, but at the same time, it's like you're trying to get this point across and it's very dramatic. Like, this is not believable, But this movie right here is like very believable, and I see what Stephanie is trying to is trying to tell the world like her story. I see that through the movie. This right here is just a preview of the movie. I purposely added it into the slide into my presentation because it actually depicts like basically in 2 minutes it depicts like the whole movie in a way. You get once you open it, you get to see Regina's mother in the boat, their journey to Kenya, and then every little thing afterwards, even though it's not the whole movie. The next point I'm going to talk about is the cultural differences. As displayed in the movie, in the video, like I just talked about, we get to see Regina and her mother traveling on a boat. One scene in the movie that really stood out to me was the beginning when Award, the house help, was unpacking the dishes and Jatel tells him to put it back, that they're not going to stay that long. And he puts it back and Award decides he's going to, I don't know, because he was teaching her husband how to speak the language. So I guess maybe he thought she might want to learn or whatever. So he's showing her the dish and he's pronouncing it in his language and she's not willing to learn. And she proceeds to tell him, if you're going to speak to me, you're going to learn how to speak German. And I thought that scene was just very powerful because I'm like, she doesn't want to adapt. First of all, you're in a whole new country. And second of all, you're in his country. Like, it's crazy how you don't even want to learn that. So that was like a very big cultural difference I've seen. And I do discuss here how she's not willing to conform to the cultural expectations of the new country at the end of the movie. Like her daughter, Regina is able to, I guess because she's young and she's just, amazed at what she's seeing. She's more able to immerse herself into the culture than her mother. I also noticed that there were different cultures represented throughout the movie, such as the German, the English, and of course the African. And I understood people in the movie find it there's certain people that find it harder to immerse in a culture than others. Like I mentioned earlier, Regina and Walter kind of adapted better than Jatel in Kenya. And that's just seen throughout the movie. But later on, Jatel, starts to adapt in her own way. This is a tweet I found and it says, when home is no longer inviting, you may find yourself nowhere in Africa. A heartwarming tale of a refugee family finding a new home in a mysterious land. And I guess this basically depicts the whole movie in just a couple of sentences. Like I already discussed, is a family in search of a new home, trying to run away, of course, and they land in Africa, a whole place they've never been to, or at least for Jatel and Regina. Relatable experience to boarding school. Regina was sent to an English boarding school and she was already taken away from the country she knew, which was Germany, and put in Kenya. And then to make matters worse, she was sent to boarding school, an English boarding school. She didn't know how to speak English and she was young, of course. And I just found that very relatable because I grew up in America, but I was sent to a boarding school in Nigeria. Both of my parents still lived in America and I was only 10 when I was sent there. I could not speak the language. My accent was different. And it was just, I was in a whole nother country and it was my first time in Nigeria too. So this whole thing, I just found it so relatable. That's why I wrote at the bottom, I wouldn't have said I was transported into another world because I felt like I was watching basically my world, kind of, in a way. So I really found the whole boarding school experience to be very relatable. And then I added a link on education because I just found it interesting. I was reading her, what she wrote earlier, Stephanie. I was reading about what she wrote and she was saying how school became compulsory. That's why she went to boarding school. But I went into a little search and I found that um, school in Germany at the time, she was schooling in Kenya, but in Germany, the education was very manipulated, for the kids because they wanted them to think and know certain things. And they didn't want to give people too much power and, so they can question stuff. But that's all in this link and you guys should check that out. It's very interesting. But the last but not least, the social conditions. So I felt like Walter felt the need that like he was very responsible for his family and that's why he was willing to adjust to his situation. Like Walter went and he got on that farm and just to make ends meet. And I just felt like he felt like he was responsible for the survival of his family. Um in the true story Nowhere in Africa, not the actual movie but the what Stephanie wrote, she discusses the boarding school, her education, and how she felt like she needed to be the top of her class because of how her classes, how the boarding school cost £5 a month and how her father only made £6 a month. So she wanted to prove to her father that his money was being put to good use. So, in her own way, she felt like certain things were expected of her, just like her father. Um, I also noticed there's some similarities in the culture there, like the Kenyans and then Regina's family, who was from Germany. Like I noticed that both of those cultures are very family oriented. They cared about, their family and what happened to them. Both of them was also rooted in the idea of hard work. Like even though like they had their differences, like the Kenyans were, okay with farming and all that stuff, but Regina's family, like her mother, not willing to conform to the new culture, or her dad, that, at the end of the day, he still reapplied for a legal position in Germany and wanted to go back once he got approved to come back as a judge. So he didn't really, you could tell like he didn't want to do the farming thing forever, which is okay. But, that's the difference between that culture and the other culture. Um, But what I found interesting is that they both do have the same ideal of hard work. Like everybody's willing to do what they need to do to get to the end, to get what they need. So that's what I really found interesting. But yeah, that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope you guys liked it. Thank you.